Alright, what's up guys? My name's Kid Capone, and today I'm going to be breaking down one of my samples from my new sample pack that just came out, Prohibition Volume 1. You can go scoop it up at my store, kidcapone.com. Yeah, let's get right into it. So, I'm making this breakdown because when I was first making samples, I really wanted to find content that would aid me in just creating and knowing how to build piece by piece how to make great samples. And so I felt like it was, part of me giving back and my duty just to make content that was easy for people to digest and would give you a lot of information and make you better day by day. So if you have any feedback or anything you'd like me to do or explain or go over and improve upon, let me know in the comments. Anything you want to know, I'm an open book. Just all you gotta do is ask. All right, let's get right into it. This sample is called The Untouchables. It's 154 BPM, E minor. I'll play the sample, and then I'll give you a little bit of background on how it was written and recorded. So let's dive right in. You get the idea. So yeah, let's go over each stem, the processing, and get right into it. So the sample's only about 7 stems. It's only 7 stems. I just have them all grouped together in Ableton, as you'll see. It's just a vocal, a couple of piano layers. I have a top line and the rhythm layer, bass guitar, little drum break to lay down the groove, the guitar layer, I played it on a Stratocaster, and a Glockenspiel, which we have here and I played as well. A lot of the sounds I record and do whenever I'm recording an amp or a lot of instruments, I like vintage mics and something that kind of gives you a little more character in the sound. I use an Electro Voice 635A, recommended to me by my good friend Al Hug. It's only about $100, $125 on eBay. I recommend definitely buying a vintage one because the character of the sound is unmatched. You're going to have such a better sound with just some vintage mics. You'll be shocked. They come almost EQ'd in the box already. So less processing, more true to the sound. Just great overall. So the sample originally started with guitar. And the guitar, when we wrote it, Spaceboy and I were trying to come up with a good sample starter, and he had an app on his phone. I'm not sure what it was called, but in the app, it suggests chords to follow or chord progressions. So I played an E minor 9, and in his app, he just searched what was a strange chord to follow it, and it came up with this E minor 6 chord, which is a chord I never would have played without using the app. So that being said, I guess a little helpful advice is never be afraid to use technology to reinvent or, give you a different approach to how you're composing and creating your art. A lot of stuff is out there to aid you, not to be a crutch necessarily, but to give you options and things that'll make the process way more fun. So I'll solo this guitar layer, and all that we have on it is just a little compression. I use the Waves Puigchild 670. This plugin right here is based on the Fairchild 670, which is an old vintage compressor used by the Beatles, Led Zeppelin. A lot of the work done at Abbey Road Studios has this compressor, and it's just notorious for being buttery smooth, almost transparent. You can't even hear it almost. But incredible plugin. Adds the warmth that you're looking for, some old vintage color. Definitely would recommend it. After that, rolled off the top at around 2K, cut out the bottom around 293. I use the FabFilter Pro Q, and I like using this piano roll on the bottom, especially if you know theory and you know the notes that are in your key. You can just grab those and get right to it. And then we have a little tremolator just to give it that volume kind of pumping effect. I'll play it dry for you real quick. That reverb that you're hearing inside of the sample came from my guitar amp. And it's a Fender Spring reverb amp. Back in the day, they only had about 3 different kinds of reverb. There was just a room, spring, and plate. Shout out to Mario Luciano for teaching me that. Those are the real ways if you want to make your samples sound a little vintage and more period correct. Use only those kind of 3 reverbs, because a lot of reverbs nowadays are very cavernous and almost unnatural sounding. And if you're just trying to stay true to some vintage period correct sounds, use either spring, plate, or room reverb. After we had the guitar layer, I laid down the piano layer, pretty much just voicing the chords as well. And you'll see here we got that E minor 9, E minor 6. Looks like we got some sort of, I have a F sharp diminished, or what is that? A F sharp minor 7 flat 5. Some fancy jargon. I don't know. It's a good chord though. But yeah, we layered the piano with the guitar, and you get this. Kind of like a little call and response between them. The piano itself is from Keyscape. I used the wing upright preset, and then I always change the color shift to 0.495 or 0.496. I don't know, it's just my personal taste. Turn the reverb off, pure character, kind of bring down the pedal noise because it's a little too loud when you just open that preset. Then we, again, keeping with the theme of rolling off the top, cutting out the bottom. Anything you don't need in the frequency spectrum, try to cut out, because the more you cut out, the more you make room for other instruments. Then, of course, RC20. It's probably one of the most utilized plugins nowadays. I mean, it's been being used, but definitely gives you that character that you're looking for and trying to make something sound more worn out. I heard a good quote that was, you have to make something dirty before you can make it beautiful. And that's pretty much what this plugin does. You can make something dirty to make it beautiful. And then a little Valhalla vintage verb, really short decay time. I used it 24% mix. I pretty much just used it to push the piano back in the mix a little bit. I didn't want it so forward and present because your ear needs to decide what it actually wants to focus on. So you can't give it too much in the forefront. You want your music to feel like it has depth and space. Let's see here. And then after we had the guitar and the piano, Space Boy sang some melodies for this vocal layer, and I'll solo this vocal layer. Really simple vocal melody, nothing too crazy. As far as the processing on that, auto-tune, of course, just to keep us in key. I like to use, in auto-tune, you can normally just hit E and minor, but I usually like to hit E or whatever key you're in, and then chromatic. And then if you go down to this small window and hit either set minor or set major, you can see the notes that the vocalist is hitting. on the piano roll right here, which is really helpful for composition. After that, we got a little, again, that Puig Child, just some soft compression, nothing too crazy, adding that warmth, color, and character again. Always, if you can add warmth to your tracks, do it. It makes them sound like they came out of a professional studio, because every big studio you see has these, but the hardware version, and that's what makes the sound absolutely incredible. Obviously a good engineer, good mix, good source material, but the plugins, they go a long way. They'll help, believe me. Then we got a little, again, rolling off the top, Fab Filter Pro Q, rolling off the bottom, cutting. Anywhere you can cut inches, you'll get miles as far as your mix goes. Keeping with the theme of pushing it back in the mix, I use Little Plate, one of my favorite plugins by Sound Toys. Again, plate reverb, vintage feeling, sticking with that theme. Mix at 100%. I just really wanted it really wet and pushed back. 3-second decay time. Kind of big, but not too much. And then to get that pumping effect, I use Ableton's just native plugin called AutoPan, set to the half note rate. Not entirely full, but that's what's going to give you that volume dipping and swelling effect. And I would attempt to open this plugin. All it is a phaser pedal. Specifically, it's based on the Phase 90 guitar pedal. You can use any phaser. You know, you got Phase Mistress. You could use GTR Stomps phasers, the Sound Toys plugins, of course, which I just said. Any phaser will work, though. You don't need specifically this one. And after all the processing, sounds like this. There it is. Then for the bass, we got Contact Scarabee pre-bass. I could have played the bass guitar on this, but just for the sake of making things quicker that day as we were working, I don't think we had a lot of time for the session. So I just pulled this up, used it, and decided I could warm it up and color it in the DAW. Puig Child, you already know. I use this micro shift set on the slap bass preset just to give the bass a little more width and space in the mix. So, like I was saying earlier, keeping with the theme of having a 3-dimensional mix and space, you want things to feel wide, open, unless you want something to feel very mono. But I always encourage people to spread out your mix, open it up. It feels just more full to the ears and more pleasing. Then at the end, we EQ'd it with this Puig Tech. This is based on the Pultec EQ P1A plugin, or not plugin, Puig Tech, Pultec EQ P1A EQ, excuse me. This attenuation knob just kind of rolls off the bottom. It's like a high pass filter. The top attenuation knob I selected at 5K and then turned it up pretty much, yeah, all the way to 11, all the way up to roll off all the top I could. Because with a bass, you don't necessarily need a lot of presence in the higher frequencies. A lot of it sits below 1,000, but in that 1,000 and above range, there is, of course, like the finger sliding sound. So if you like that and you want that to be prevalent in the mix, you can keep those frequencies. But generally, if you cut it around 5K or 6K, like, it's perfect for a bass guitar. And we'll solo that bass line. You can hear it. I'll play it unprocessed. You can hear immediately without the processing. It's just very in your face, which you don't always want, especially when you're making samples. Some producers like to cut out the bass or high pass the sample entirely. So if you can help them, help them. Right when I put on that micro shift, you can feel it widen and open up in the headphones. So headphone users, you'll really like using these kind of plugins. And there we go, cut off the top. Easy. The backing groove, we used Contact's Abbey Road 60s late kit full. Simple pattern. I'll play it unprocessed real quick. just kind of laying down that backing groove. First we processed it with some decapitator. Give it that drive and a little oomph. Sounds like the drummer's really hitting it. Of course, EQ. I used a bandpass EQ on this one this time. Really cutting out those highs and lows because I wanted the drums to be felt but not so prevalent in the mix. I needed to leave room for a producer to add their own drums and sounds like that. You know, you don't want it to be too forward, but it's okay to have something there as the rhythmic bed of your sample. Then after this EQ, little lustrous plates. This is a plate reverb plugin. It's just a different color than Little Plate. It's made by Liquid Sonics, and it's available in the Slate Digital package. I definitely would recommend it. It's got amazing character and amazing sound. Made the reverb time really small. This is kind of almost like a post EQ, cutting out lows of the reverb. So you don't need a lot of bottom end with reverb because it can really muddy up your mix if you have too much bottom end. Then let's see, we did the guitar, got the drums, bass, piano, vocal. Yeah, and then the Glockenspiel, which we played and recorded here. I'll play it processed, soloed, and then I'll play it unprocessed so you can hear what we did. I don't know why that's my Glockenspiel face. And I'm bad at air glockenspieling, I'm sorry. So that sound, unprocessed, no EQ, nothing. Very dry, sounds like this. And so what we did is we put on a little compression, Puig Child. Again, my favorite compressor, probably one of the most used things I use in my mixes. FabFilter Pro Q, bottom top, you already know. Echo Boy Jr., one of the better delay plugins. Absolutely incredible, vintage sounding. Definitely would recommend every Soundtoys plugin. They are a staple in all of my sample creation. So I definitely would recommend you never to sleep on these plugins. Getting that ping pong width bouncing back and forth in our ears. Valhalla Vintage Verb. Longer decay time, 74% on the mix. I like using different reverbs for different colors. It's just all in personal preference, but never be afraid to jump around, try something else, and don't feel like you're stuck in a box where you're limited to just one kind of reverb or one plugin. I encourage you to have variety. It's like cooking good food. You want different spice, and not everything has to be so rigid all the time. And then we used some Pan Man. Again, made by Soundtoys. This is just giving us a soft pan in the headphones, left to right. Max width almost. Yeah, a lot. Rhythm 4 bars, and then just a slow panning, left to right, nothing too crazy. But definitely adds a lot of color. And then this piano top line. This is the same keyscape instance. Oh, it's not actually. I apologize. I used this cinematic preset, and then I probably tweaked it a little bit, tweaked the color, probably adjusted the reverb time a little bit. Pro Q, this time I left in a little more of the high end and cut out more of the bottom because I just wanted to make sure it really sat above the other piano, but they still felt like they went together. And Valhalla Vintage Verb, very small decay, again, keeping with that theme of just a small reverb, or something that feels like a room. And I put the mix at 15% just to push it back a little bit. Again, creating depth, space, all that good stuff. And we'll hear this piano with the main piano, and you'll hear how they layer up together. Pro tip when you're writing piano parts, real piano players like to roll some of the notes. Just adds a little more character, a little more bluesy type of feeling. And so when you're writing your melodies, definitely have some of these note rolls. Just like I do over here. Always adding a little more spice. Anything that you can do to make your samples feel more human-like and human played, definitely do it, because that's where music was made, you know? It was made by man, and so you definitely want it to feel like it's being played by a group. But keep in mind, music is art at the end of the day, and it's open for interpretation. So do whatever you feel like is bringing you joy, and never be afraid to just try something new and maybe get outside your comfort zone and really push yourself to do something else. All these individual tracks are being bussed at different amounts to a return track that I have, this reverb over here. I'm cutting out the bottom so there's no big lows hitting the reverb itself. And then I use this Abbey Road plates reverb. This is based on the EMT 140 or the EMT 240, just depending on which one you're selecting. And that's, again, a very famous reverb unit used in Abbey Road Studios, obviously, but they use it in Motown, Sigma Studios, a lot of places, you know, Stax Records. Any of those places like that are generally used to use a plate reverb. And incredible sound. This plugin, it's made by Waves. It's a little heavy on the CPU usage, so you kind of want to have a powerful computer if you're going to use it. I wouldn't recommend using too many instances of it, but definitely would encourage you to use this Abbey Road plates right here. And we'll just solo this reverb bus. Again, negative 10 dB. I didn't want it too loud, but this reverb return chain is really going to give you that every instrument feels like it's in a similar room. Even though I do have different reverbs and different spaces in the mix, and they're panned slightly, as you'll see, you know, 5 right on the Glockenspiel, 10 left on the guitar, 10 right on the piano keys. You really want them to feel cohesive and like they belong together. So, pro tip, bus everything to a group reverb and blend that in, and it'll do you wonders. I'll play it with the reverb, or I'll solo the reverb first. Really gives you that room sound, that old reverb type sound. And then you just blend that in. Like I said, I had it at negative 10 dB. If you have it without it, it still sounds good, but when you have it on, it really gives you that room feeling. Everything's unified and meant to be together. On the group itself, I have, again, Puig Child 670, just to use it. This one I'm using more as a glue, something to just subtly tie it all together. And then I use this plugin, one of my top 3 plugins ever, and it's probably not 2 or 3. This plugin, Soothe. This, if you're not good at mixing, if you're not a good engineer, if you feel like every time you mix and something's too harsh, or you compress it and you're trying to make it sound good and you're like, why doesn't it sit right? Soothe is a lifesaver. This is like 1,000 multibands of a multiband compressor, and it really reels in all those harsh frequencies fluidly and transparently. You can see it working very subtly. I use this mix knob to kind of give you more of, I don't want it pulling it back all the way. If it's at 100%, it'll go to 60 dB of reduction. That's a little too heavy. Again, just do it to and adjust it to taste. But definitely would recommend the 64%. Just that 9 dB is not too much. Really glues it all together. And then on our master track over here, Puig Child, some subtle glue for the whole group. Again, just trying to even things out, not make any harsh frequencies really poking out or anything like that. Then Soothe. This time I have it only set to a max reduction of 4 dB. And that's because I just want it very subtly just to catch any harsh frequencies or spikiness I missed. J37. This is a tape emulation plugin, and I definitely encourage you, if you're ever using a Waves plugin, click these little question marks and they'll pull up the user manual, and you can learn what every button on all these plugins does, from the saturation to the noise level to the different kinds of tape. Each of these little numbers right here are a different type of magnetic tape that they used from different eras. And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't read this little manual and click this little question mark. So I encourage you to learn the most about each plugin, learn what every little button does, because that information is invaluable and it'll help you make quicker decisions later. And overall, just keeping yourself educated and sharp on anything you're using is smart, because you want to use plugins, and everything you do, you want to do with intention. You don't want to just throw something on there just because you've seen somebody do it. You want to know why it's on there. What is it actually adding? What is it changing of the sound, or what color is it adding to the sound to make my ear enjoy it or just sound better as a whole? Then after the J37, use this L2. This is a limiter by Waves. I'm not limiting the sound too much. I'm kind of just using it as a group way to bring up the volume as a whole. So without the L2, still sounds great, you know, perfect. But just to really get that extra volume and loudness, I enjoy using a limiter. So yeah, that's the whole breakdown of the sample today. I hope you enjoyed it. I was just trying to create something, like I said, for the community. I'm trying to give back, and any feedback you have or questions you have, hit me up. I am Kid Capone on Instagram. I am Kid Capone at gmail.com. If you want to collaborate, send me sample starters, anything. I'm an open book. Feel free to message me. My website is up now, kidcapone.com. Links are in the description below. That's pretty much it. I have more breakdowns and sample pack related things coming up in the future. Big news coming up, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, that'll be it for the day. Have a great day. Happy sample making, and hit me up soon. Take care, everybody. See you later.